Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once more to this channel. Here we study groundwater and what it does, and we try to explain it. So, before we continue, I would like to say that just like the channel, the videos, and then press on the notification button. So as we load videos, you get it as soon as it is done. And another thing is that you can subscribe to this channel. Like it on every page. So let's start. So last time we mentioned that today we'll be looking at how water gets to the ground, how we get groundwater, and the technical name of the process that happens is what we call the hydrological cycle. The hydrological cycle. It is not anything big. After the explanation, you understand that it is very, very simple. So what happens is this. When the clouds are, weather conditions are normal, or the clouds become heavy and the weather conditions are appropriate, you see that there's this water that comes from the sky to the ground, which we call rain. And when it rains like that, it gets to the surface of the earth. When it gets to the surface of the earth, initially something happens. There are holes in the soil that we call pores. So when it hits the ground like that, it goes through these pores. When it gets to the pores, it goes further and further. And the process that we use to term this process is called infiltration. So the rain infiltrates into the soil, and then it gets to the ground, subsurface. And when it gets to subsurface, what happens is that at a point, the pores become full. It has become saturated. And when it becomes saturated, the rest flow on the surface of the ground, of the earth. And that's what we call runoff. And this runoff end up in so many places, so many channels. Some gets into water bodies that such as rivers, streams, lakes, and then they all end up in the sea. But we look at that process. So some of the areas that these they get into drains as well, and drains leads to some of these water bodies. So whilst it runs off and gets into this water body, it's continue to infiltrate until the pores get full, and then the runoff also continues. So when it end up in these water bodies, and these water bodies too, they flow. The rivers flow from upstream to downstream, and all water bodies, most of them end up in the sea. So once it goes through these water bodies, in the water bodies today, there's infiltration that happens. They go through the soil, and whilst they go, until they end up in the sea. Even in the sea, there's still infiltration. There's still infiltration. So all these things happen, and as the runoff also continue, temperature sets in, and temperature also sets in. Then there's the moisture. That's the wind. There's wind or air that blows. So the wind and the temperature also causes um, the water to vaporize. And when there's vapor, the vapor gets into the sky. It happens on the surface and this water body, and even in the sea. So when it happens like that, it gets into, that's what we call evaporation. And it gets back into the sky, and then with favorable condition, another cloud forms, and then it condenses and another cloud forms. So this is what we call evaporation. Another thing is that inside the soil, where there are roots of plants, the root tap some of these, the water subsurface. That there's the moisture, or the moisture subsurface. So when it taps it, what happens is that they use it for their processes. That's what we call. And then there's another thing that happens. That's transpiration. That's evaporation with happening within the this thing with the plants. That's what we call transpiration. Now, when with this transpiration, too, you can see that some of the leaves there's moisture on the surface, so evaporation also occurs there. So sometimes we term it evapotranspiration with plants. So that's what happens, and these all become like vapor, and then gets into the sky to condense, and then give us what we call the clouds. They condense and then they form the clouds. Now, in these water bodies, something happens. Whilst there's the water infiltrating to the ground or like subsurface, another thing happens. In the groundwater also, there's something called capillary rise. The water rises from the from subsurface into these water bodies. So this thing happens. So whilst the water bodies replenish the groundwater, that's what we call recharge. There's another capillary rise which also replenishes the water bodies. So this also happens in the process. So this cycle continues. When it rains, this cycle continues and go round like that, 24/7. It happens whenever there's rain, and then the process continues like that. And all this process is a continuous thing. That's why we call it the hydrological cycle. So I think if I've gotten what it meant by the hydrological cycle, if there's any question, put it in the comment section. And then if there's any comments to you, any idea that you want to add to you can put it in the comment section, and then all those ones too will be addressed. And please don't forget to like the page and then the channel, and don't forget to also subscribe and then press on the notification button on all social media platforms. Thank you and have a wonderful time.